Okay guys, welcome to the second video on the TwoOverFour YouTube channel. Today we're going to be doing something slightly different from the first in the fact that it will be actual content. It's not going to be me awkwardly talking into a camera for 11 minutes, which was as awkward for me as it was for you watching probably. So today we're going to focus on some actual mechanical jobs. In the month of ownership that I've had the GSXR, there are a couple of small niggly little issues that I've found that I don't really like. It's got a small leak from one of the drive shaft seals as well, so that'll have to be torn out and replaced. So today, really the focus of the video is that, just that 100% mechanical sort of integrity, any small servicing issues, maintenance issues that I found on the bike. We'll be delving into them, giving you a short little basic how-to. It's not gonna be anything super in-depth. This isn't gonna be a how to change a drive shaft seal video, but it will show you sort of what you'll need if you're attempting a similar job, attempting maintenance on your bike, attempting servicing. So whilst a brief video, hopefully it gives you enough information. And so from there, we'll just step right into the first part of the video. Okay, so before we get into any of the deep mechanical work on this job, I thought I would give you a quick rundown as to the setup that I use when working on bikes. Mine's pretty simple. It's just a case of a front and rear paddock stand. These are the Oxford Premium lines. I picked these up on sale from JNS about 2 weeks ago, about £180. So yeah, they're a little bit of an outgoing, but for the quality of life improvement that they offer from having these, it's totally worth it. If you are unfamiliar with sort of the process as to how paddock stands work, mine are fit really simple in the fact that I have bobbins either side of the swing arm on the rear, which you can pick up for your bike if you don't have any, usually off somewhere like eBay for around £20. It's not a huge amount of money. So again, these bobbins just fit into the swing arm, and then the paddock stands have a U-shape attachment which just fits under the bobbins, and as you sort of lift, will push the rear of the bike off the ground. Really simple, bit janky to use at first when it's your first time, but you get used to the process of lifting the bike really quite quickly. And then the front paddock stand has two little rubber nodules on each side, which just sit under the forks. And again, when you press down on the back of the paddock stand, that movement just lifts the front off. So whilst it doesn't offer a huge amount of space, it just alleviates that lean off the bike. And it does just lift the rear tire off the ground. So it gives you that freedom to move the rear wheel. If you want to clean your chain, if you want to get the rear tire out, it just makes your life a whole lot easier. Okay, so really before doing any work on the engine side of things, I always like to drop the oil out of a bike, especially when it's a leak like this. I don't know how long it's been leaking for. I don't know how much oil it's dropped. Whilst I can still see on the sight level on the other side that the bike has oil in it, just for my own peace of mind, I'm going to be dropping the oil out of the bike. So before you always drop oil, you should always heat the engine up, not to get it super hot, but just enough to bring the viscosity down so that when you drain the engine, as much comes out as possible. So that's really the first step. Just going to let the bike run for 5 or 10 minutes, just get it warm, and then we'll drop the oil out of it, and then we'll start actually stripping this side casing apart. Okay, so I've let the bike warm up now to about 55 or 60 degrees on the water temp display at the top, which is plenty hot enough. Again, you don't want to let it get too hot because if that oil does touch your skin at full operating temperature, it can give you quite a nasty burn, so 55 degrees is fine. First thing you want to do is identify your sump bolt, which in this case is a 16mm bolt right at the bottom of the engine. If you are unsure as to where it is, either look online at a forum or get yourself a Haynes manual like I have, and that way it's quite easy to make sure you're getting the right bolt. So one thing else to remember is that behind the sump bolt is a copper crush washer. That acts almost as like a seal between the bolt itself and the sump to make sure that no oil is escaping, because a lot of the time these small oil leaks from the sump bolt itself can be because there's no crush washer installed. So one thing to bear in mind before you start, I've got my new one over there, and let's crack on with draining the oil. Okay, so now we've drained the oil out of the engine, and I just wanted to give you a quick example of what I meant by the crush washers. So if you look on the bolt there are two small washers next to each other on there. These don't always have to be copper, like I said sometimes before. These I think are, looks like stainless steel. And again, what they do is they essentially act as like a secondary seal between the bolt and the sump itself, just stops any oil leaks. And sometimes when you do see sort of small weeping oil leaks from bikes, it can be because these crush washers haven't been replaced. Another cool thing about this bolt is you don't see this very often. If you look directly at the end, this little magnet. What this essentially does is if you've got any swarf or metal in the engine, it'll drain to the bottom and get attracted by the magnet, so therefore it doesn't get sucked back up into the system. It's always good to just check this when you're looking at it, just make sure you haven't got any telltale signs of any catastrophic engine issues coming up. Sort of lets you know the general health of the engine, but yeah, this looks all good. So we're going to put the nice new bolt and crush washer in place, and then we're going to get around to changing the oil filter, which luckily for me is all the way under that panel. So we've got to drop the whole of the front of the bike off, get the oil filter out, and then we'll move on to stripping the side off. Okay, that's the oil related side out of the way. We have drained the old oil out, put the new bolt on with the new crush washer. Last step, of course, is the oil filter. Now, age-old question, do you put oil around the rubber seal or not? I always do, because a lot of the time these have been sat on shelves for about a year, and the seals have become quite dry, and I think they can quite easily crack, which would lead to sort of weeping around the oil filter itself. So for me, it's kind of a no-brainer. Just put a dab of the new oil around the oil seal, putting it on hand tight, not like the last bloke who did it tighter than, you can add your own line into that. And then again, once that's on nice and tight, we can look at filling the bike back up with oil. Now, in my case, I always use fully synthetic oils. Yes, they are a little bit more expensive than the semi-synthetics, but I think the benefits of the full synthetic outweigh the semi so much that the extra money is worth it. Now, for me, I've gone for the Motul 7100. Again, if you put your reg in on eBay or Eurocar parts or something like that, it'll bring up what oil you need. So for me, it's 10W40. Weird thing about Motul 7100, which I didn't know, the oil is actually red. I was a little bit confused because it kind of looks like gearbox oil when I first opened the packet, but according to the sleuths online, that is correct. So let's get the oil filter whammied back up, and then we will get into the next part, which is stripping down all the side casing of the engine just to get to the front sprocket, which is behind here. Yeah, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so I figure this would be another good point to just take a quick break, just so I can explain sort of what's going on now that we've taken the front sprocket cover off. So essentially what I've done here is I've cable tied the front cover up. The reason that I've done this is because if you see this cylinder here, that then goes into the cable up here, this is your clutch cable. So essentially the adjuster at the back of the cover here, if you wind that out or in, will adjust the free play in your clutch lever. So I don't want to touch that because I have done that before and it was a right pain in the ass to get back in the correct position. So I have just cable tied it out of the way, left the adjuster as it is, because I know it will make my life a hell of a lot easier. So these are the three main parts to your drive chain assembly. You have the front sprocket cover here, then we have the actual chain itself in gold, and then right at the back down here, we have the rear sprocket. So now the front sprocket cover is off, we can see the front assembly, it's all revealed. And the leak I have is actually behind this front sprocket. So essentially what's happening behind this front sprocket is, this bolt here is bolted directly into the drive shaft, which comes out of the gearbox. As the gearbox turns, this front sprocket drives with it, driving the chain to the rear sprocket and essentially makes you go fast. This is kind of a part of routine maintenance really, is getting this front sprocket cover off, making sure there's no gunk up behind here, which can be quite common as that chain sort of flicks round, all the old chain lube and dirt flicks off onto this front sprocket. So it's a good idea every now and then to just get that front sprocket off, just to clean it, just to make sure it's not too built up and too gunky behind there. So the next step for me is just removing this bolt, removing the front sprocket, and then I'll show you where the actual oil seal itself is and where it's leaking. So there is one final step that we must do before removing the front sprocket, and that is loosening the chain. Essentially, with the tension that's in the chain at the moment, the front sprocket is unable to move off that drive shaft. As you can see, there's quite a fair bit of tension in that chain there where it should be. And without removing that tension, then that front sprocket will not be able to nicely come off that front drive shaft spline without damaging it. So essentially what we're going to do is we have two adjuster nuts on the adjuster for the chain here. This first nut here is the locking nut, and this second nut on the outside is the adjuster nut. So we're just going to undo this locking nut and then back this adjuster nut off slightly so we get a little bit less tension in that chain, so that we can nicely move the chain off the front sprocket and remove the front sprocket. Now before doing this, you must loosen off the rear wheel. You don't have to take it out completely. What we have to do is just sort of crack off this nut here so that there's a little bit of side-to-side movement in the rear wheel. So that's what we're going to be looking for here. So we'll just crack on with that, take this nut off, loosen the chain off, and then with that, after that, we should be able to pull the chain off the front sprocket and the front sprocket off the drive shaft splines. Okay, so it's quite clear we've identified where the leak is coming from at this point. If you look at the bottom of this bolt down here, it's quite evident that we have oil weeping from around there, quite thick as well. Obviously, it's quite easy to mistake this with chain lube, but I think the main difference is that you can see that this oil is liquidy and fresh, whereas the rest of the dirt around the drive shaft is kind of a bit more caked on and a bit more, has been there for a while. So the next step really is to replace the seal. So what we're going to do is undo these three bolts here, and this big rubber seal you can see here is actually the culprit in here. Then we'll give the area a good clean up. The reason we're doing this really is so we can see if it starts leaking again. There's no point putting it all back together again with the same gunky casing, and then we've got no idea if we've actually fixed the leak. So we need to make sure we clean this all up properly, replace the seals properly, put it all back together, take it for a quick little test ride, make sure it's all good. Yeah, that's what we'll crack on with. So now we've got the first side casing off of the bike. You can see on this particular piece that there are two individual seals. So we have the front larger seal, which is this brown ring in the inside here. And then on the inside, we have this much smaller, thinner O-ring, which just sits around that lip. So by the looks of it, this is where I suspected it to be leaking. As you can see, there is quite a lot of corrosion along that lip. So I'm not sure whether this has been dirt that's been getting in for a long time. That's what's caused this leak. We're going to have to pull this old oil seal out, give this mating surface a nice clean up, and then put the new seals in. Okay, so 10 minutes later and we have both O-rings replaced. We have the outer black one, the thinner one around here that we showed earlier, and then we have the bigger brown one on the inside. These both now been changed, brand new, nice and sat at home. And of course we've cleaned up all the mating surfaces along here, because if we left the crap and crud that you saw originally around there, then that might not seat on there very nicely and we could still get a leak. So it's just best while it's off, quick wire brush around the outside, bit of 2000 grit around the sandpaper around there, around the edge. And then again, the same just on this mating face on here, just a bit of 2000 grit sandpaper, just to make sure there's no crap left in there. So now we've got that all cleaned up, we'll put that back on there, put all the side casings back together, and fingers crossed that we have solved the issue. So yeah, we'll go from there. Okay, so whilst I didn't plan on ending my video with a full how-to on how to adjust and clean your chain, I'm just going to give you a quick, very brief rundown of what I'm going to be doing here when I put this all back together. So as you know earlier, we loosened off the lock nut here and the adjuster nut here on the rear swing arm. This allowed that rear wheel to move, and so we can get a bit more slack in the chain, so we can get the chain over the front sprocket. As you can see, if I now move the tyre forward, it will shift on the adjusters, like so. And that is essentially what we don't want. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get the chain back to where we need it, so it has the correct amount of slack, because as you can see, that is way too much and swinging about like a donkey's dick. So that's way too much for what we want. So we're going to get it back to where we had it before, make sure that we get the correct amount of free play in the chain. One thing to note, that the amount of free play in a chain varies from model to model. Again, in my Haynes manual, it tells me that the free play that I'm looking for is between 20 to 30 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the tightest point of the chain, which is kind of done by, when you rotate the wheels, just watching this level here as this sort of goes up and down. And at some point you'll find the tightest point on the chain. I can't really show you, I can only explain how to do it. And so what we're then going to do at that point, just a ruler behind it, start at a measure that makes sense to you. So for example, 20 centimeters, and we're just going to move that chain up and down and measure that full stretch in the chain. So at the moment we've got over 60 millimeters, so we are way too loose. So what we're going to do is back this adjuster off, lock in the lock nut, measure again until we get the correct amount. So again, we're going for 20 to 30 millimeters. And one thing to remember is you have adjusters on both sides of the bike, so make sure that these adjusters are equal, because if they're not, the bike will essentially, the back wheel of the bike will essentially be doing that and will have sort of toe out when you want it to be dead straight. So using the lines in the back here, just make sure the same amount of lines are visible on each side, and that will make sure that when you found the correct free play in your chain, that the tyre is dead straight, you don't have any toe out. So I'm going to crack on with that. I'm going to get the chain adjusted properly, going to make sure that the tyre is dead straight, get the bike back on the ground and do up the front sprocket nut. Okay, and with that, the bike is all back together. We've got the side fairing back on, all bolts, panels clipped back in place. We have made sure that the gear linkage is back on the mark where we put it earlier, and all actuators are installed correctly. One way to check this is just to give the clutch a quick check, just to make sure that it's working properly. Feels nice and stiff, doesn't feel like it's going to slip out. Perfect, it is all good. So now that we've cleaned everything up, no more oil leaks along here. Last thing to do is just to fill the bike with oil. So we'll switch around to the other side of the bike, we'll chuck in some fresh oil and we'll get it going. Okay, time for the final step, filling it back up with oil. As mentioned earlier, only ever use Motul 7100. It is only because it's fully synthetic. All you're going to really need here is a measuring jug and to look up the correct volume for your bike. So in my case, it's 2.4 litres that need to go in. It may vary depending on whether you're changing the oil filter or if you're not, or if you're doing a complete dry rebuild. So I know the stats for mine are 2.2 litres for just oil change, 2.4 for with filter, and 2.9 for a complete engine overhaul, which is 2.9. So yeah, we're just going to measure it out, get it filled up, start her up. Okay, so we're at quite a good stage here. Oil is back in the engine. It's not leaking out, which is always a win because you're always worried that the minute you put it in, it's going to fall out the bottom somewhere, but it's kind of just above the halfway line on the sight glass, on the side like you just saw in the previous frame. So what we're now going to do is we're just going to turn the engine over for 5 seconds max, not long at all, just to let the oil circulate throughout the engine, because don't forget there'll be little crevices, little places where the oil isn't yet, like for example in the new oil filter that we've put in. Although I did add oil to the oil filter before I installed it, again, there's probably still some places that it's not where it should be. So we're just going to turn the bike on for 5 seconds, wait for it to cool down for a minute or so again, watch where that oil level fills, and then we'll fill it up, top it up, and then we should be good to go. And there you go, that is the perfect example of why when you initially fill up a bike, you don't leave it running, you just have that initial 5 seconds where it just gets the oil to where it needs to be. As you can see, it has completely disappeared from the sight glass. There is absolutely no oil left in it. So what we're going to do is just crack back off the fill nut, fill it back up, back to a level where we think's good. Again, rather run her for another 5 seconds, make sure we haven't overfilled it this time, and that should be all good. And again, it looked like we had the same problem. It looks like that the oil has just completely drained from the engine the minute we started it again, which it did. And I had me worried for a minute then. I was thinking, shit, how much oil do I have to put in this thing? So I didn't want to put any more in at that point because I kind of thought I've added 2.9 litres, which is sort of the dry engine recommendation. I didn't really want to add any more. So what I've done is I've just let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes. I've come back to the bike and I know you can't see it on the camera, but it is pretty much bang in the middle of the sight glass, and I'm kind of relieved really because I was kind of thinking where's the oil going, because it's still not showed up on the sight glass. So it looks like we're nearly there. I'm probably going to add just another 50 ml of oil, just so it's just sort of 3/4 of the way up that sight glass, which I think is what's recommended, and then we should be completely good to go. Okay, and with that the second video comes to an end. This one's been a bit weird for me because it's again doing something that I'm not used to, filming a lot of angles that I'm not used to, and filming a lot of things that I'm not used to. I know that kind of sounds like I'm starting OnlyFans, but I'm not yet. Again, it's just been a bit of a weird one, a bit of a learning curve again. So hopefully when I take this back to edit, there's not too much crap that I have to get rid of and too many things that I've missed out, and overall it makes sense and it's a good video. I've tried to show a bit of my day-to-day working and you know, kind of a few how to basic things, nothing too detailed. But again, this is kind of just the start of making this bike what I want it to be, making sure everything runs fine. So that's a big job out of the way. It's the oil leak done. Next video, it'll either be, we'll get some new mods, like I really wanted the Acra downpipe, so maybe we'll get them installed. So we'll see what happens. Thank you all very much for sticking around for a second video. Hopefully this one was more entertaining. And thanks to all those who have subscribed already and have stuck around for a second video. If you haven't subscribed already, just click the button down below and I'd really, really appreciate it. Every video that I post, hopefully that number goes up. So yeah, it's been a really positive first 2 videos and hopefully we can kind of continue on that momentum from there. So again, thanks very much for watching the 2over4 Moto YouTube channel and I will see you guys all in the next one.
And my mind gets tired of waiting. It'd be wasted time to save this.